Okay, so Natalie, we were just talking off air around the similarities between fitness, exercise, and parenting.
Yeah.
Do you want to just? I said save this for the podcast. This is some gold.
It's too good.
So
It's too
whilst
good.
now that we've hit record, do you want to share some of the metaphors that we were discussing about how fitness can be translated into parenthood?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like a muscle. It really is. I say to parents all the time that come to me, there's no rule book or guide telling you how to parent your child, and what works for one child doesn't work for the other child. And I think as well, it's you're learning all the time. And the same with exercise. If I think of when I was new to fitness, and then as I got into it, how much learning and growth I had to do, and even like the physical representation of building muscle, it's not something that just comes after one
Hmm.
set that you do. And I think with parenting, there's almost like this, okay, well, now that I'm a parent, I'm supposed to have all my stuff figured out. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, and I'm supposed to like be at this level. But I always like to think of it like it's a muscle that you're busy growing and developing as well. And so often, along with parenting comes learning how to regulate your own emotions. Because a big part of the work that I do with kids is helping them learn to work through their big feelings. But it's also about parents, because who taught us in our kind of generation, who taught you to regulate your emotions or to sit with difficult feelings? And I'm not a finger pointing to our parents. I think they did the absolute best they could do, but parenting has changed so much over the generations as well. And so with many of the adults that I support, and we also have to think about mental health and emotional well-being, that's like we're all aware of that now. So as you as the adult are trying to work with your difficult feelings, sit with those uncomfortable feelings, which is a muscle, it takes time to kind of build your tolerance level as well. And therefore it's very similar something to being with exercise. It takes time to kind of get strong in, okay, I'm going to hold it together, I'm not going to shout at my child. And that can be really difficult, because it's an ongoing journey, I think, and there's always going to be something new that you can learn. So yeah, in that way, I kind of think it's very similar to the fitness industry. You can kind of think of it in that way.
And how do you coach your parents that you work with to work on dealing with their emotions so they don't take it out on their kids or children?
Yeah, good question. And I think, first of all, I think it's becoming aware of what are those stories that you're telling yourself about what's happening with your child. So let's say, and I understand, your child doesn't want to go to bed, your child doesn't want to leave school. We have to, first of all, understand what's going on for them in their brain, because children's brain, is wired very differently to ours. Their emotional hub of the brain is far more advanced and developed than that logical, rational thinking part of the brain. So when they're having a meltdown because they're drinking from the red cup, but they really want the blue cup, I mean, it makes no sense to us. It's not a big deal, but for them in their world, it is a big deal. And they simply don't have the tools or the skills or the brain capacity yet to be able to work through those things, because that prefrontal cortex, I refer to that as the thinking brain, the part that helps me to think rationally, to solve my problems, to think clearly, to think, oh, this is not a big deal. That part's not fully developed yet. It's only fully developed by the age of about 25. So,
Wow.
I mean, it doesn't give, I mean, and if you think about the dumb stuff you might have gotten up to in your early 20s and your teens, that, it's like, what was I thinking? Now, it doesn't give them a get out of jail card. Well, I can punch my brother in the face and it's not my fault until I'm 25. Absolutely not. But it does help us to manage our expectations, to actually change that thing of, they're giving me a hard time, they're pressing my buttons, and it can feel like they really are, to they're actually having a hard time and they need my help. But equally, it's about recognizing, how do these emotions come up for you as well? And beginning to, that's one of the first steps, beginning to shift that perspective of, it's not actually to me, they're struggling right now. And in essence, I encourage parents to begin to think that you need to be that thinking part of the brain for them. Because I teach a concept called flipping your lid. That's not mine. It's taken from Dr. Daniel Seagull, that talks a lot about brain development. And he talks about the hand model of the brain. So this being the thinking part of the brain, and this is the feeling brain. And the two bits normally work together. But if those big feelings take over and I shout out or there's a meltdown, I've flipped my lid. And when I flip my lid, that thinking part of the brain is not in control, and that feeling brain is taken over. Now, their feeling brain is a lot more developed, like I said. So it's our beginning to think that actually I need to be that thinking part of the brain for them. They will react, they will respond, but I need to be that thinking part of the brain for them. So that's one of the starting points. And then also looking at how they can start to regulate their own emotions. So a lot of this supporting children with their emotions is us as adults being able to model and co-regulate with them. And that takes a lot of work, because that's, like I said, that's maybe many of us weren't taught that. We were told, go to your room, maybe made to feel shame for feeling angry, or even given a hiding. It's changed so much. And so that's why it's also understanding that, you as the parent, the caregiver, you are just as much of a learner on this journey as is your child.
How important is it for parents of young children to pay attention to their emotions, but also their potential perceptions that they've built up over the years and years and years, and the beliefs, and so it doesn't seep into their children, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
How do you break that? So, I mean, that's the ultimate sort of question, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, and it's probably a big root of cause of what you do. But
yeah.
Talk us through that, because and the reason I asked that is a couple of months ago I was speaking to a psychiatrist about in a social setting, and she was saying, look, if you're thinking about having kids, one advice I'd give you, and she was giving it in the context of business, and she said a CEO's problems, if he can't deal with his problems, it'll always seep in to his teams. Instead, think about this in parenthood. It's like, if you start having a family and you haven't sorted your shit out, it's going to seep into your kids. And I thought it was really interesting. I was like, that's I can see why that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think definitely. One of the things I would add to that, I don't think we've ever got our shit sorted out. I think there's always going to be stuff, right? So I don't want that pressure to be like, oh my God, I can't have kids now until I sort myself out, because that's just never going to happen, right? Your kids are actually brilliant teachers. I think your children can be brilliant mirrors and brilliant teachers for where you need to grow, for what the work is that you need to be doing. But it all starts with awareness, becoming aware of how you're getting in your own way, becoming aware of what those triggers might be. So an example will be, and this is actually a conversation I had with a friend just on Monday, and she was telling me about her daughter who's now 9 years old, and she's getting a little bit sassy, and she's always kind of preteen, like flicking up the hair, and she's like, and very outspoken. Her daughter's very outspoken. And I asked and she said, she said to me, she's like, this really irritates me. It's like, this like, I can feel this like, not anger, but this frustration inside me when my daughter acts like that. So then I asked her, I said to her, I said, when you were that age, what would have happened to you if you were allowed to voice your thoughts the way that your daughter did, said what was on your mind? And she's like, oh no, I would be like reprimanded. Don't talk like this. And if I think, how often that is, don't talk, and that was a big trigger for me as well. Definitely in my early years of teaching, I was like, how dare this child talk to me like this? I'd never be allowed to speak to parents, adults in this way. And of course, that doesn't mean, okay, our kids get the full room of, well, I can just say what I want to say to you. But understanding actually, is underlying that, is there perhaps a need of, well, I was never allowed to have my voice be heard. All I really wanted at that age was to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. But I mean, this takes a lot of deep work. We don't just get there in one session. And it's a lot of, initially, I would say the starting point is beginning to notice those thoughts that you have, or those feelings that you have. And a big question I often ask as well is, what did you perhaps need as a child when you were that age of your child? What was it that you needed? And it always comes down to, I wanted to be seen. I just wanted somebody to listen to me. I just wanted somebody to understand. And I think, that's so key, but it's awareness is key. And look, you're going to mess it up. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. And a big part of what I do with parents as well is about that repairing phase of, when we talk about flipping of the lid, it's like, well, mummy flipped a lid today, and this is what happened. And, I talk about the hidden feelings under the angry mask. I think I was actually feeling really tired, and I was disappointed because of something at work. I'm sorry. I love you. That's brilliant. You're modeling to your kids how to apologize. You're telling them what's going on in terms of what's hiding under anger, and expanding their emotional vocabulary. And over time, you're also teaching them how to contain and work through their emotions in their own way over a period of time. But I think taking on rather that perspective that, yeah, I'm always going to have stuff to grow on, but see this as, okay, this is an opportunity for me to grow. What is my child trying to teach me here? And you're not always going to do that because your child's just going to piss you off in some circumstances. You're like, oh my God, okay. But upon reflection, could you maybe start to think about that? And then consciously, it's about consciously, okay, and maybe it is, later on we have a conversation with my daughter. I love how you always voicing your opinion. I really notice that you're always speaking up. I really like how you stand up for yourself. But maybe there are some words that, one of my clients said, I use unpleasant words. Maybe there are some pleasant words that I use and some words that we could not, what are other ways that we could be saying this? So you could have those conversations then. But yeah, I think I'm going off on tangents. I'm going to stop there. I hope that answered your question.
Well, yeah, one emotion I think a lot of kids will face is fear, especially in a growing pressurized society. I mean, I thought there was pressure 15, 20 years ago. I think now there's it's on a different level, right? And that's probably why part of why your work exists and so powerful. How do parents who are listening help their kids deal with fear, with failure, with expectation? Because that's another aspect: expectation, societal expectation, but also parental expectations potentially. If the parent is successful, the kid may feel they have to follow a specific career path, or so there's so many different. There's probably a lot of angles there on that question, but feel free to dive into it the way you'd like.
Yeah, I think one of the first things, definitely when it comes to let's talk about fear of failure, because that's a big thing that I see with children, because it's their world in terms of academics and school and those sort of things. And yes, okay, as a society, we've created this expectation of, our self-worth is linked to those external things. So if I don't get the A star, if I don't get into the A team, I'm not good enough. That's sort of the mindset that a lot of children I see have. And I saw that in the school system too. When I set up Power Thoughts, I did a survey at the school I was working with, and 92% of the kids, it wasn't a massive school, it's about 300 pupils, but 92% of them said, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of making mistakes, afraid of getting things wrong. Now think about it just using fitness. How do you get stronger? How do you build muscle? It's working through those periods where things are really hard, right? And it's like, I can't do it, I'm just going to do one more, and so I think it's helping children, first of all, to understand that actually failure, mistakes are necessary. So how can we begin to embrace that? Carol Dweck has a brilliant book called Mindset. I don't know if you've come across it. And she talks there about children are more readily open to embrace their mistakes once they know what's going on in their brain. So I teach children about the fact, that we've got billions of little brain cells, and they grow and get stronger and make friends when we make mistakes, when we learn something new, when we get things wrong. Our brain is a muscle. So yeah, you can do things that you're confident in that are easy, and your brain, your brain's doing a thing. But when you do those difficult things, that's when your neurons are making more friends. I actually encourage them, go and, I was playing with this earlier because I've got a client later, we're making a neuron, we're making a brain cell. Then one of the challenges is go and make more friends for your brain cells this week. So go and build more of them, see how many you can make. The other thing as well is there is also, so with failure and fear, the best thing you can first do is validate the feeling, because it's easy to say, oh, but don't be scared, but you'll be fine. But then we're just missing an opportunity to really connect with our kids. So just, connect and say, do you know what? This really sucks. It's not great. You've not got the score you want. I get it. This is hard. So connect and mirror that emotion first. But then we also want to look at, how do we move on from this failure? And with some failures, there is a bit of grieving. Maybe I need to wallow in my feeling for a couple of days, depending on how big the situation is. But then it's like, okay, I've got a choice. I can either let this thing have power over me, or I can take back my power. So I give children a set of power questions where we start to look at, okay, what's good about this mistake? What do I know now that I didn't know before? What can I do differently the next time? What advice could I give to somebody? So So because when we start to do that, we're starting to open up the brain, like the opportunity mindset. Because when we're caught up in the why me, I can't do this, I can never get this right, blah, 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 very closed mindset, we can't think, that actually elevates that fear. We get back into that flipping of the lid. When the stress hormone kicks in, we can't think straight. So asking those other questions is a brilliant way to begin to look at that and celebrate. I mean, one of the clients I worked with, we had yes moments. He'd give himself a high five whenever he made a mistake, when things were hard, because yes, my brain's growing, my brain's getting stronger. And I think also normalizing mistakes as a family, and this can be hard because, definitely, I mean, running your own business, I'm like, oh my God, I hate failure. Just the other day, I was like, oh, I could have so done better on that. And I beat myself up and I was like, no, I've got to practice what I preach. And it's hard. But then, okay, what can I learn? How can I move forward from this? And I think so it's us as adults modeling it to them. And, even like at the end of the day, like who's made the biggest mistake today? Or who's had the biggest learning moment? And everybody shares, what their yes moment was, or their learning moment was. And when it comes to, I think, fear as well, in terms of other aspects, like fear of, speaking in public, I get that often, or fear of trying something new, or making new friends and those sort of things. One of the things that we look at is actually flipping those fears into excitement, because physiologically, we feel, fear, butterflies my tummy, heart racing, clammy, sweaty hands. When I get really excited about something, butterflies my tummy, heart racing, it's like the energy. So physiologically, it's the same feeling, but it's all down to the story I'm telling myself about that feeling. And I'm sure you've come across Mel Robbins, right? To the 5-second rule. And, she's got a fantastic way of teaching this as well, that I get kids to watch too, about when I have the heart racing, the butterflies, that's excitement getting me ready to do the next thing. Now, understanding, obviously, fear, there's a place where fear keeps us safe, like crossing a busy road, not getting into a stranger's car. That's when fear is good. We should listen for it. But when that fear creeps up, when it's not a life or death threatening situation, we're talking about like the day-to-day kind of school stuff, what I've just said, like staying out of your comfort zone. See that's excitement. I'm excited to get out there and talk on stage, to share my message. I'm excited to go to this club and see what else I can learn. It's not going to take that feeling away completely, but now you're telling your brain actually what this feeling is and why I'm feeling like this, and it stops us from flipping that lid. So it keeps that lid switched on. And there are some really interesting studies done, I think, by Harvard, where they found that children who went into a maths exam and said, I'm excited, performed better than those who were, reframing that as nervousness. And adults that went into interviews and public speaking did better when they said, I'm excited. And so I often say to kids, like, this is just the energy you need to do this next thing. So see it like that. And it's good for adults too. It works for adults.
Yeah, everything you're saying applies across the board, right?
Yeah, we're just a big kid inside. So
absolutely. What about societal pressures and peer pressure and social media and all these different things? Because I feel like kids are facing more challenges now than potentially before, or maybe it's just the same challenge but in different medium. But how do you approach the situation, both from a child perspective but also from a parent perspective?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think, if we talk about social media, it's here to stay. And I know that sometimes your parents are like, I don't want my child to have a phone. There are benefits to social media and technology. And obviously, just like anything, too much of something is not a good thing. So I think with social media, it is really important to be aware of what's going on in your child's world. And this is lots of little conversations that always having that like open door policy. And this is really hard with teens, because your kid might, your child might come to you and say something you like all your kind of red flags go off. But I think in terms of trying to have those conversations with them from a non-judgmental space, and you might hold me like, oh, okay, tell me more about that. What do you think about that? Oh, who said that? What do you might need to hold it together and like get it out of your system with somebody else. But in that moment, try to get into your child's world and be non-judgmental. You want to try and keep that open door policy all the time. And I think also having those conversations about social media. What does it feel like when you go on your feed and you scroll your feed? You know, my friend Lucy Sheridan always used to say, you know, your social media feed should be like a house party. Who are you inviting to your party? Who are you inviting into your home? And I think that's such a great way to look at it, you know. And if I'm looking at things online that doesn't make me feel good, that makes me feel insecure, are those really the things I should be following? Because I've got control of that. And, you know, that also comes down to thinking about, well, what's in my circle of control? I can't control, you know, what people put out there and all the things, but I still have a level of control of what I choose to pay attention to, what I'm watching, how often I'm watching it. And I do think, you know, there's also that element of having those conversations about what it's like to use this responsibly so that it's healthy, you know, educating your children on the negative effects of being addicted, being too much screen time. And actually, how do you think we can make sure that you're doing this in a healthy way? So we're also not telling them all the time. Bring them in. You're like, okay, so all love having a phone, love being connected to our friends, there's all these good things, but sometimes this can also not be that great. So how do you, you know, like whether it's like having no, you know, outside time, exercise, nature, maybe days where we don't spend time on our phone, and obviously modeling that as a parent as well. So not being on your phone, because that can be really difficult. And I think as well, you know, when it comes to the pressure, so, you know, sometimes parents come to me and children have a tough time standing up for themselves. And I think what's really important here is having your child, and normally the kids, you know, the children that I support in that space are quite quiet. I'm not, you know, being journalistic, but tend to not want to speak up because I'm afraid I'm going to upset somebody. I'm afraid I'm going to be mean. That's actually just a client yesterday, and she's very polite, very courteous, doesn't want to upset anybody, but actually we need to give her opportunities so that she feels comfortable to raise her voice. So in the home, that could look like, you know, and this might not be very popular, so pick your battles, but where can you allow your child to say no to you or disagree with you? Because if we want them to say no in a high pressure environment with people they don't know, they need to be comfortable to do that with us. And I think, you know, that's something I'm still learning too. You know, I was very much the good girl, people pleaser, and I think so it's really okay. It's, you know, and other opportunities as well might be encouraging them to make their own decisions. So no, I'm not going to decide for you. What do you think is the right choice? Because sometimes I find that those, you know, children that struggle with that might be like, what's the right choice? I just want to make people happy. Just make sure they're right. It's actually, no. What do you think is the right choice? How would, you know, and we go with that, even though you might not know, oh, it's not the right choice. And obviously safety wise, you know, like, so that's all falls in place, but just giving them some opportunities to feel those uncomfortable feelings, and also knowing that it's absolutely fine for me to stand up and say, no, I don't want you to speak to me like that. And I'm not being mean. I'm not being unkind. I'm just assertively standing up myself. Because I think that the children that I work with struggle with thinking, but that's not kind. So I'm like, but what's not kind about it? You're not calling them a name. You're not saying mean things. You're not belittling them. You're just saying, no, I don't want you to speak to me like that, or whatever that statement might be. And that might even be, you know, if your child is really strong, that practice role playing that at home. Let them get comfortable saying it in an assertive voice, saying it with that assertive stance as well. And again, this is a skill, you know, this is a skill that we're building. And it might even be that you're learning that as well, you know.
I'm interested, what ages do you typically work with? Because and what sort of age bracket are you thinking of right now when you're speaking
about the standing up yourself?
Yeah, so just in general, like, is it sort of across the board, or is it
so I tend to start working with children from about 5, 6 and up, and exactly there, the standing up, saying, you know, that I did it with a 6-year-old boy, and I did it yesterday with a 15-year-old client, obviously different scenarios and different things. So typically, I mean, I was a primary school teacher before, so I think when I initially started Power Thoughts, my focus was on primary sector, on, you know, from years, 5 and 6 till I think they're about 11, 12. I do work with teenagers as well. Absolutely do, with some fantastic teens I work with. But with teenagers, the only thing I say to parents is they need to want to have the support. I think it's a lot easier, the buy-in with little kids, it's a little bit easier. But with teenagers and young people, and I'm sure you've noticed that, with fitness, well, there's no point you being here if you don't want the support. That doesn't work. But yeah, so basically from about 5 and 6 and up, and then obviously support parents separate, independently as well. But when I work with children, I always do a debrief session with parents so that we can go through some of the tools and strategies so that parents can begin to support their children as well. And I've got programs in place that parents can work through with their children in their own time, so parents actually learn as well. And I encourage parents to go through the lessons and the worksheets and stuff with their kids, and then I've got contact calls with parents. So it's a whole pick and mix.
How do you incorporate health, fitness, nutrition, and mindfulness into some of these strategies? And
yeah, good question. So definitely, when it comes to mindfulness, that's one of the first things that we look at, because we can't work on dealing with the negative thoughts, the worries, the self-doubt, how to shift perspective if we're in that state of fight or flight. So one of the first things that we look at is, what can I do to calm the nervous system? Looking at different strategies to bring me back to the present moment. So we do a lot of strategies in there through breath work, movement. I've got something called Move It to Lose It. So that's, and that was taken from Dr. Daniel Seagull as well. It's a brilliant book he's got called The Whole Brain Child, which I would recommend parents go and read. And the strategy there is, if I feel this big feeling, because an emotion is just energy in motion and we want to release that. So instead of giving my power away by punching or lashing out or breaking things, I'm going to move my body in a safe way to lose the big feeling. So whether that is, one of my clients, whether this is true or not, but he said, oh, I love burpees. I was like, okay, that's your movement to lose it. So every time you feel like you want to flip your lid, do 20 seconds of jumping up and down, or putting on some music and we're going to shake, we're going to dance it out. Or many of the boys that I work with love football, so take your football but kick it outside for 5 minutes. So whatever you can do to move your body to lose those big feelings.
How do you do that for 5-6-year-olds? Sorry, how do you do that for 5, 6, 7-year-olds? Yeah.
So recognizing where these big feelings are in my body, what it feels like. So we first look at that, and I feel angry, get them to color in, where in my body I feel the anger, the worry. And then one of the breathing tools is, power breathing, or it's take 5 breathing, where we breathe in like this. And another tool is Move It to Lose It. So I actually get my timer, and, and I tell parents as well, this will be a little bit of practice that you do with them. And I'm like, right, you're going to stand up. I'm going to hit my timer, 30 seconds, go. We're going to move, shake. You're going to move it out as fast as you can for 30 seconds. And we get that going. And so obviously that's the practice session, because they're not really angry when they work with me, But with parents, it's okay, look, this is one of the strategies. So one family I work with, they created a power playlist, and they had a few songs that the children liked. And so when they started to notice, they're like, oh, we're about to flip our lid, let's put Move It to Lose It on. Didn't always work, but sometimes it was enough to, okay, Alexa, play this, and off they go. Another family I worked with, they just use their time, and they would say, right, when this comes up, this is a sign you two have had enough of each other, and we're going to do Move It to Lose. And I'm going to set my timer. We're going to go for 30 seconds. And she said, we'll in for another 30 seconds. She's like, by round 3, they were laughing, and it actually dissolved the situation. It's not always going to work. None of these things are, foolproof. And I think the best thing we can do as parents and caregivers is I'm about to flip my lid right now, but I want to hold on to my power. I'm going to do Move It to Lose It. And you start going, so you are modeling that. And another client I worked with that didn't like vigorous exercise, but her Move It to Lose It, I'm just going to go outside and go for a walk around the garden. I'm going to, walk around the garden. So it varies, but it is quite popular with children that have a lot of energy, that
I like it.
Can get quite angry. And it's good for us too. I mean, we know what we feel like when we've had a workout and you've been angry before or anxious before. I mean, that's one of my, I do sometimes struggle with anxiety, and I know first thing in the morning, I have to get my exercise in. If I don't, it makes such a difference when I don't.
What if you've got more of an introverted, shy, closed up child? Is that is that similar sort of, are they drawn towards doing something like Move It to Lose It, or?
Not quite. They would go more for the breathing exercises.
Yeah.
And I think just go with whatever resonates with your child in terms of what can help you. You know, some children really, I mean, power breathing is really popular. So power breathing is, you know, get them to imagine that their tummy is like a ball. I've got this expandable ball, and we breathe in for a count of 3, and we slowly breathe out through our mouth for a count of 5. And we practice in that. And then I get them to take a small soft toy, and, you know, they practice power breathing. So they lie on their back, they put the small soft toy onto their belly. As they breathe in, it goes up. As they breathe out, it goes back down. Or something, you know, something just of weight, that the focus is on that. Sometimes we also make a bottle of superpowers, which is a glitter jar. So we've got an empty jam jar filled with glitter, and the glitter represents my thoughts, my feelings, my behaviors. And when I get really mad, I shake that and the glitter settles, and I do my breathing. So I'm breathing in my superpowers, I'm breathing out that feeling. So that's quite nice, I think, as well as a visual exercise.
And how do you, like, speaking to the parents right now, and they want to implement some of these strategies, how would the parent coach their child to understand when a strategy like this is useful?
I would say modeling it yourself, so that because children don't do what we tell them to do, they do what we see. And so I think that's a big thing in terms of, you know, if parents have been able to watch this, understanding that flipping of the lid, that's a brilliant way to actually just have a chat with your child and say, do you know what? I think mummy flipped my lid, or daddy flipped my lid the other day, and this is what I've learned about my thinking brain and my feeling brain. When have you flipped your lid? So you do that. And then so I've learned, you know, power breathing. Let's breathe in for 3, breathe out 5. Another good one for kids is take 5. So we breathe in and we breathe out, and we breathe in and we breathe out, and you obviously carry on all the way. And so having that conversation, maybe a few conversations about, this is what I'm going to start doing, but I think we should all try to help us with our big feelings, to help us stay back, you know, in our power. And then you modeling it. And even it's like, oh, I'm about to flip my lid, I'm going to use my breathing, you know, and literally you're just trying to do it to regulate your own emotions as well. And one mum said to me, you know, she was having a really tough time with her son, and he was under a table having a meltdown, and she was trying everything. She's like, I think I'm going to snap. She's like, I'm just going to sit here for a bit more. And she just said to him, she's like, look, I know you're having a tough time. I'm about to flip my lid. I'm doing take 5 that Natalie taught us. And she said, I literally sat there doing it for myself. And she said, when she looked over a little bit later, she's like, he was starting to do it too.
Natalie, just for those listening, what exactly are you doing with your hand? Just if you can describe
so
that.
take 5. Thank you. So it's where you hold out one hand. So you just hold out the palm of your hand to stretch it out. So your 5 fingers are in front of you. And then you take your pointer finger of your other hand, and you just trace up from the base of your palm all the way up your thumb, and you go back down. And you trace up your forefinger, and you go back down. And as you do that, you're breathing in as you go up, and you breathe out as you go back down, and you breathe in.
Slows you down just doing that, isn't it?
It totally does. I mean, another one that I also use, but this is the take 5 is popular because it's tactile. It's something they can touch. It's something they can do.
Interesting.
But another one, you know, that's also popular is box breathing. So where we just trace a box. So as I trace across, you know, go horizontal, so I breathe in, and then I trace up and I hold it, and I trace across, and I go back down. But I do find the take 5 is useful because you can see it. And, you know, I tell kids you can do it at school under the table. Nobody needs to see what you're doing. And I think it's really great, you know, for parents. Even I sometimes say to parents I work with, begin to model this. Even if you're not flipping your lid, like just say, oh, this cool, it's really, like, make something up and begin to model it. Or if you have taught this to your child, now this will be very annoying, but it will work. Get them to teach you, get them to remind you, oh, what was that thing I told you? Can you come and show me? They will be very good at telling you that you need to use your breathing.
Well, and that's the one question I had is there's obviously a lot of things always going on in the world. And, you know, whether it's something as bad as a war, or whether it's COVID-19, whether it's a virus, and you know, all these different things that are happening, and it can be quite a stressful time for adults, let alone children. But some children may not know what's going on. Some may have idea of what's going on, but they're a bit unsure. Anxiety happens, and, you know, being locked in. Like if we're just doing the concept of lockdown, How do you have that conversation with your child around what's actually happening and coach them to understanding what's going on? I'm
It
assuming
is
also, by the
difficult.
way, that since lockdown and since COVID-19, you your work has become more and more powerful, right? Because
Yeah, definitely. And it's a very relevant point there, because I actually delivered a workshop for a corporate company not too long ago on how to talk to children about difficult world events.
mm,
And look, it varies obviously from the age. What you're going to tell a 5-year-old might be a different conversation to what you have with your teenager. But a few starting points is, okay, if we think of little younger children, so it is a little bit more nuanced. They might not know about what was it, the war in Ukraine recently.
yeah,
So they might not be aware of that. Okay. But if you know that your child will be coming across these things, I would say it's, either on playground or what the older brother saw on you. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you think there's a chance that they're going to hear about this, it's obviously better to have a conversation with you. Now, what I normally start off with is encouraging parents before we jump in, because it's like, well, what do I say? And I want to fix it. And we want to fix it, right? And the reality is we can't fix these things. So recognizing that, and what we want to do is meet your child where they're at. So first of all, just find out what they know. Oh, so tell me more about it. If they come home to about the war, are we going to die? Those were the sort of comments that John said. Wow, that's a big statement. Tell me more about that. Where did you hear that? What makes you say that? So you want to find out a bit more, and from there start to use, so kind of be led by them, right? So because sometimes what we can do is be like, well, this is and maybe we give them too much information that they just don't need to know, or they haven't asked for. The other thing as well is definitely validating again, the validation, the mirroring of their feelings. And even just, do you know what? I get it. It is really scary when we don't know what's happening. It is really difficult. I love you right now. We are safe. So you validate. It's not like, oh, but don't worry. Or, but no, you don't have to worry about it. Make space for that feeling. And with kids, actually, so primary school, I actually encourage parents to create feeling characters. So we've got the sadness, we've got the worry, maybe we've got the nervousness. And the reason why we create these characters, and even like if they're comfortable with that, like, you've built that up in your language, being like, oh, it looks like we've got a visitor here. It looks like, I don't know, Mr. Nervous is here. What do you think he's trying to tell you? By doing that, we're helping them to personify their feelings, so that they begin to see, I can feel my feeling, but I'm not my feeling. And also begins to see our feelings come and our feelings go. So we just allow the space. And I mean, I'm sure you've experienced times where all you wanted was just to feel heard, just to feel understood. You don't want anyone to fix it. You just wanted the space to just talk. And that's really what we want to give them here. Obviously, really important to reassure them that right now they are safe. If it's little kids, look, there's lots of people in the world working really hard. Well, part of mummy and daddy's job is that we take the worries. You can give us the worry. Sometimes I even get them to like draw their worry in a picture and we take it. So it's like a physical thing. With older children as well, obviously there's more conversation. Again, meet them where they're at. What do they know? How do they feel about it? You validate, you mirror those feelings, and it's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to feel scared. But again, we reassure they're safe. We reassure that right now we're safe. And then I'd also say, get them involved in terms of what can I take action on? Because so much of that worry is about I'm not taking action. So what is within my circle of control? Can I either maybe do something in my local community that I'm helping people? Or is it that I get involved in a project and we start to donate things, or whatever it is? So what is within, or in my circle of control right now is I'm just going to use my breathing to help me stay calm. So another breathing strategy there for anxious anxiety is, we call it hand on heart breathing. So placing your hand on your heart and kind of imagine that you're giving your heart a big hug. And so again, breathing into the belly, and as we breathe in, so to them, also like imagine there's this color coming into your heart, and then we breathe out. And as we breathe in again, and we breathe out. So the hand on heart breathing is also really good, because when we do, it kind of is like you're giving yourself a hug, and it releases the oxytocin. So when we actually have that contact, the heart starts to release oxytocin as well, and it's the deep breathing. And yeah, I'd say definitely and also focus on the people that are helping. And I'd say definitely, minimize the news or have child-friendly versions of the news on, I think BBC News Round. There's been a few like resources, I can't think off the top of my head now, but like child-friendly news clips that they can watch if they want to be informed, watch it with them. And then also make focus on, well, who's helping, who's doing good in the world, because we know, the news is great at like giving you all the negatives, but there's a lot of good stuff happening.
Yeah.
And so I think, and just these will also be lots of conversations, little conversations that might come out of bedtime or, and it's just making space for that.
Amazing. Natalie, what are some of the main reasons people come and work with you personally?
Loads. I think definitely around top ones around, children feeling angry, struggling with their big angry feelings, children really struggling with mistakes, can't make mistakes, gives themselves a really hard time, beats themselves up, negative self-talk, worry. So a lot of I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm rubbish, I'm a failure, and confidence as well. So that's, for children. And then with parents, it's about how can I support myself and better understand my child. So a lot of these tools, but then we look at obviously going deeper into what's going on for you as a parent. What are those stories you're telling yourself? How are you, it's about helping you to regulate your own emotions, so that you're able to support and help your child. So yeah.
Amazing. What are your top 3 books for parents?
Top 3 books. So definitely mine. I don't know in the cupboard. I've got some activity books for kids. So which I'll send you the link. So Find Your Power, Stretch Your Confidence. There's Know Your Feelings, and Help Your Friendships Flourish. There's 4. We've got 4 activity books.
Amazing. We'll put those in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll send you the link for them. And then there's also definitely The Whole Brain Child by Dr. Daniel Seagull and Dr. Tina Payne. And the other one that I've been reading that's been brilliant is called Connected Parenting by Jennifer Calori, specifically focusing on those strong-willed, she calls them the gladiator children. So children that don't like to be told what to do. They know what they want, which they're going to be great later on in life, brilliant. But how can we work with them? And to be fair, actually, the techniques that she shares in there is applicable, not just for kids, but how to get on with adults as well, and just how to connect with adults in terms of mirroring their experience and validating emotions. So those would be my top books.
Amazing. And Natalie, how can people find out more about the work you do and potentially get in touch with working with you through Power Thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So Instagram, I'm quite active on there, Power Thoughts NC. I'm starting to show my face a lot more on LinkedIn. I'm enjoying that space. So that's just Power Thoughts by Natalie Costa. And then my website, so www.powerthoughts.co.uk, and you can message me there and get in touch.
Amazing. We'll put all those links in the show notes. But a massive thank you for coming on. I think there's a lot of value that parents and children can take away. Even I took a bunch of tips there. I'm going to try that hand one. I like the hand.
Go for it.
What did you call it?
Take 5. Take 5.
I thought that was a great one. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your valuable advice.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.